Hello, everyone. This is Jeffrey Kerr. I'm back here with Alex Meyer, picking up from where we left off yesterday, discussing our Oscar nomination predictions. We've gone through previous 18 categories. We got six more left, which are the animated categories, documentary categories, foreign language, and short categories. So I guess so. Here's how we're gonna do it. We're gonna go. Well, I guess in order of the categories Gold Derby's letting us predict. So we're starting with animated feature. So Alex, you start by reading off your current rankings.
All right, I have Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Isle of Dogs, Incredibles 2, Ralph Breaks the Internet, and Mirai.
I have those same five, though ranked slightly differently. I actually have Incredibles 2 in second place right now, with Isle of Dogs in third, though. Yeah, I guess those two do seem kind of interchangeable.
Yeah, Incredibles 2 could get hurt by the Pixar sequel curse, and
Well,
and
well, go ahead.
Isle of Dogs I think might have a slightly better chance because maybe some could see Wes Anderson as being overdue for some kind of Oscar recognition.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And well, yeah. Plus, Brad Bird obviously already has two Oscars for the first Incredibles and Ratatouille, so they may not feel the need to want to give him a third.
hmm And yeah, and Isle of Dogs would mark Wes Anderson's seventh Oscar nomination and still zero wins so far.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Uh huh. Yeah. But
It'll,
well,
it'll also be interesting to see if we could kind of see somewhat a similar thing of what happened last year, where a film that maybe wasn't the most critically acclaimed but still a huge box office hit could sneak in here, like say The Grinch. We saw that last year with The Boss Baby.
right, because you have the entire Academy voting on nominations in this category.
hmm Well, yeah, but like you still have to be part of a volunteer committee as well, according to the rules.
Mm.
It's not like the voting's open automatically to entire membership, at least in the nomination stage.
Yes, and of course, to your point about the Pixar sequel curse, only one Pixar sequel so far has managed to win, which was Toy Story 3. But of course, that had the cachet of being a Best Picture nominee, so there was momentum behind that.
Well, not to mention that the best animated feature category didn't exist for either Toy Story or Toy Story 2.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah. I mean, oh yeah, it wasn't established until 2001.
With Shrek being the very first winner,
Yes.
beating out Monsters Inc.
hmm Well, yeah, it's interesting because obviously Disney often dominates this category, but this year it looks like the award will not go to Disney for once.
Yeah, I mean Spider-Man's just been sweeping so far, so I don't see it losing at this point.
Yeah, yeah. Although I did hear people say that think it's possible that Isle of Dogs could win the BAFTA, given that they kind of do have appreciation for Wes Anderson over there.
Well, I guess they have a better appreciation of stop motion in general, because
Hmm.
Kubo and the Two Strings pulled off an upset win over Zootopia over there,
Yeah. So, so I guess we shall see. But
and quite a lot of stop. And it seems more stop motion animated films tend to come from the UK than the US,
well, yeah, like Wallace and Gromit.
right? Because that's home to Aardman Studios.
hmm
Although although of course we have here in the US we now have Leica.
hmm Yes. So I guess now moving on to best documentary feature, and the lineup I have is "Won't You Be My Neighbor," RBG, Free Solo, Three Identical Strangers, and Minding the Gap.
All right. Well, I have four of the five, although in different rankings. But my fifth slot is, I think, might be what many people will consider a surprise contender, but it has picked up some smaller awards. So I have Won't You Be My Neighbor, Free Solo, Minding the Gap, RBG, and then Hale County This Morning, This Evening.
Hmm. I might have seen a couple people, at least a couple people predicting that. But what's behind your prediction?
Well, it won at the Gotham Awards and it won at like Cinema Eye, so it's picked up some documentary prize precursors.
Hmm.
Um, it was a hard thing to pick. I mean, I was going back and forth about do I keep that in or keep Three Identical Strangers in, because I know Three Identical Strangers got in at the BAFTAs, but even though it's about American people, the filmmakers behind it are British, so that could possibly be part of the reason there.
Hmm.
And I think Three Identical Strangers, having seen it myself, it very well could get nominated, but I do think maybe some Oscar voters might be frustrated by some aspects of it because, it's about these identical triplets that were separated at birth as part of this experiment by this psychiatrist. And while that psychiatrist is dead, they do talk to like his assistants who helped him out, who are like now old and and everything. And they kind of do the whole, yeah, what we were doing was kind of wrong, but it was still so valuable for these reasons. So I think some voters might feel frustrated by that because
Hmm.
it kind of doesn't really provide answers to the questions you're looking for when you're watching it.
Well, in any case, well, this should be one interesting year for the documentary feature category, as there's several high-profile nominees in contention.
Yeah, but I also think Hale County this evening, it based on what I've heard about it, it kind of reminds me a lot about one of the most famously snubbed documentaries in Oscar history, Hoop Dreams,
Hmm.
which follows, and like Hoop Dreams, this film follows a couple of African American kids from like late teens and into young adulthood, and that like it follows them over a period of couple of years. They both go on different paths in life, and it examines how their lives have been as the results of the choices they've made. But whereas Hoop Dreams, I believe, was set in Chicago, this one is set in like rural Alabama. Plus it would bring some diversity to the category
Hmm.
because
Okay.
since three of the five predictions here would be about white people. Although you would also have some diversity with Minding the Gap because that follows a diverse a diverse group of kids as well. I haven't seen it because it didn't come to my area, or if it did, I'd missed out on it. But I think at the very least, the "Won't You Be My Neighbor," Free Solo, and Minding the Gap, I think, are definite locks at this point.
Yeah, I have noticed some people aren't predicting RPG to make the cut.
Right, and I know there have been some who've said it's too much like a typical biographical documentary, but I think given the political climate we're in and that, how revered she is as a person, and just the fact that it's also expected to get a Best Original Song nomination, I think all of those help the film get in here.
Hmm. Well, well, yeah. Plus, Ruth Bader Ginsburg has been the headlines in the news of late, given her health.
And also, of course, the other film based on her life, On the
Yeah.
Basis of Sex, starring Felicity Jones and Armie Hammer. And
Hmm.
like that film kind of explores a key theme of the documentary, namely her, fight to be taken seriously as a female lawyer, and of course also the relationship with her husband, which was, a very equal partner relationship, which was very rare for that time.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens here because I've noticed every year I've tried to predict this category. There's always at least one or two contenders that few other people are predicting, that but maybe gain some attention in some of the smaller awards that we don't think will get in here, but then it does.
Well, well, I guess we shall see. So now moving
Although
on
there,
to. Oh,
although
sorry.
there
Go
is
ahead.
there is one documentary, I'm not predicting it because I don't really think it has a chance to get in, but I could possibly see it get in given its similarity to other documentaries like it. It's a documentary called The Distant Barking of Dogs,
Hmm.
which is set in Ukraine. It depicts this story of a boy and his grandmother who are like, I guess their village has been attacked by the Russians, and they're like one of the few people still left there. And we've seen documentaries about the Ukrainian crisis in the past get in here over the past couple of years. So if they decide to explore more of that, I could possibly see that breaking in here. But that hasn't really gotten too much love anywhere else. So that's like a very distant ch- contender.
Hmm. Yeah, so I guess now moving on to best foreign language film, and well, of course, the winner already seems obvious at this point, but I guess in any case, read off your rankings of your predicted lineup.
I have Roma, Cold War, Capernaum, at least I think that's how you pronounce it, Shoplifters, and Burning.
Okay, I have the same top four, although ranked slightly differently. I have Shoplifters lifted up higher than Capernaum, but I mean, I mean, well, and oh, and my fifth spot, I actually have that going to Never Look Away.
Hmm. Yes, well, I Never Look Away, I considered that, but I ultimately left it out because I have heard complaints about it, mainly due to the fact that some people, I guess, have complained that it's too long with its runtime of over 3 hours, and apparently it's pretty slow paced as well. Apparently, this film wasn't didn't do too well with audiences in its native Germany. Apparently, many
Hmm.
Germans walked out of theaters frustrated. Some before the movie was even over. Again, because they felt the running time was too long and the film was too slow paced. At
Hmm.
least I'm.
Very interesting.
So when a film struggles to do well in its own country, I, I don't think that's a good sign. Whereas with the other contenders, um, they all have their prestige and like previous signs of acclaim, like Roma and Cold War, obviously because of who's directing them and their history of award at being at these award shows so far.
As
Capernaum, I
well.
mean,
Oh well, and not to mention Cold War and Roma are people. Well, I mean, obviously Roma people are expecting to do well, and some people are also predicting Cold War to at least grab at least one other nomination. Like me, I'm predicting it to get in for cinematography, and in fact, I noticed some people are actually predicting its director to get in on as a no guts no glory prediction.
mm, I'm not really I'm not really confident about him getting in the directing category
Well,
because
yeah.
the BAFTA directing category is never a good indicator of who will get in at the Oscars, in my
Well,
opinion.
yeah.
Because
Well, yeah. The last time they correctly forecasted all five nominees was 2000.
yeah, I mean, for instance, like in 2011, they had two people in the Best Director category whose films were pretty much dead with the Oscars. They had Nicholas Winding Refn for Drive and Lynn Ramsey for We Need to Talk About Kevin. And of course, Drive only got one Oscar nomination when everyone was expecting it to get maybe at least 8 or 9. And We Need to Talk About Kevin was dead on arrival. Although I do agree with many people that Tilda Swinton should have at least gotten a Best Actress nomination for it.
Hmm, yeah.
So, and of course, last year the BAFTAs nominated for Best Director Denis Villeneuve for Blade Runner 2049, and he didn't get nominated anywhere else, well, except at the Saturn Awards. But of course, the Saturn Award nominations are usually announced after the Oscars are over.
Hmm. Well, yeah. In fact, they correctly for well, Esther BAFTA correctly forecasted only two of the five best director nominees at the Oscar, which were Guillermo del Toro and Christopher Nolan.
Hmm. Yeah, and because you have, yeah. So I
Mhm.
mean, it just remains to be seen how many directors have at least seen Cold War, or at least Academy members in general. But with Capernaum, I have that in third because it's already been nominated everywhere else, Golden Globes, Critics' Choice, and I believe BAFTA as well. The Academy also really seems to like films from the Middle East, which is why I have it in here. And given that it's being directed by a woman, that could certainly help it as well. Uh, and it's about a young boy, and films that deal with young children going through like these very difficult crises often tend to get nominated here. So it kind of like seems to check off the boxes of what a typical best foreign language film nominee looks like.
Hmm. Okay.
Plus, it
So
has an interesting story about a boy who sues his parents for bringing him up in a life of poverty.
wow.
And then I have Shoplifters a little lower just because I don't know how well gonna do, given that Roma, Cold War, and Capernaum seem to be getting the most nominations out of all the groups and everything, like critics and stuff. But Shoplifters, I think, has a chance because it did win the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival, and while Burning didn't win the Palme d'Or, it did come in, I believe, in third place. So it was considered highly acclaimed when it premiered at the festival.
Hmm.
Plus, if people are looking for a little star power, it does have Stephen Yeun from The Walking Dead in there, who has won a couple of critics' prizes for Best Supporting Actor, and I know there are a handful of people who think he'll be a surprise Oscar nominee.
I did see that.
So yeah, I mean, I guess I do think Never Look Away is on the bubble in a sixth slot because of its director Florian Henkel von Donnersmarck. Nice name, by the way. Who did win this category for The Lives of Others, but then of course he did direct The
The
Tourist,
Tourist.
Angelina Jolie and Johnny Depp, so that might make turn some voters off.
Well, if they even remember that.
Yeah. Plus, and I do know with Never Look Away, the cinematographer was is Caleb Deschanel, who's
Mm,
already been nominated for 5 Oscars throughout his career,
yeah.
and his daughters are the actresses Emily and Zoe Deschanel.
Mm-hmm.
They've
Yeah.
got a whole family in the business.
Yeah.
So I mean, I have seen a few predict maybe Caleb Deschanel will be a surprise Oscar nominee, and if he is, it would be his first nomination in 14 years because his last nomination was for The Passion of the Christ.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think these five that I have, I think they're a lock in this at this point in the category.
Okay. So I guess
Al-
now moving. Do you have more to say?
Although who knows, maybe we could possibly see one of the lower end of the ones ranked at the lower bottom, like Ica, sneak in because last year we did see On Body and Soul from Hungary get in, and almost no one was predicting that film to get in.
Well, yeah. Not to mention the documentary category. A lot of us thought Jane was the documentary about Jane Goodall was going to win, yet wasn't even nominated.
Yeah. All right, and then okay,
Now
and
on to
then
the short categories, which are the trickiest categories to ever predict at the Oscars in terms of nominations and wins. Yeah, so and now
yeah,
that and it's now
at least
I'm sorry.
for sure we'll get in.
I'm sorry.
I said for best animated short film, there's one contender I think that will obviously get in because of the company that made it.
Well, yeah, and I believe it's my in probably your first place ranking right now, and that's Bayo.
Yeah, Bao or if it's Bao, I don't know how to pronounce it.
Well, we're doing the best we can, ladies and gentlemen. So, yeah, my overall rankings are Bayo, Bilby, Animal Behavior, Lost and Found, and Weekends.
All right, well I have Bao, Bilby, Age of Sail, Late Afternoon, and Weekends.
Hmm. Okay. So, so I guess what's your thinking behind that?
Well, well, do you watch the short films every year? Like, do you go to your local theater that might be playing them and watch them there?
No, I sadly do not. I'm just basing my predictions in these categories off of the odds.
Right, but well, kind of how I base my predictions, I kind of because every year I like to go watch the packages that they send out, and my art house theater will play them. I notice certain trends in each of the three short categories, which is kind of how I base my predictions. And I've noticed for animated films, they tend to go more towards the sweet family friendly angle with like one or two taking a serious tone. So, and they also like to use contenders that have a different variety of animation techniques. Um, because like films like Bao is obviously going to get in because it's Pixar. I've heard Age of Sail does like a unique virtual reality thing, which is partly why I'm predicting it. Bilby, it's about a cute animal, and cute animal shorts almost always get in every year.
Well, yeah, as Chris
Uh,
Beecham keeps reminding us, when it comes to the short categories, go with the one with the animals.
um, Late Afternoon, I kind of put that in here because kind of a serious one because I have the plot summaries here that Charles Bright wrote out. I printed them out just to kind of help me with a video I'm making for my own channel
Mm.
and for this. Late Afternoon seems like it'll be on the more serious side because according to the plot summary, it says it's about an elderly woman who finds herself going back through her memories of the past and present. So that has me wondering, does it use different animation techniques when going through her memories? And then Weekends again takes a serious angle and also animated shorts. There always tends to be at least one short involving a child at the center of the story. And Weekends is about, it says there, a young boy going back and forth between the homes of his divorced parents,
Mm.
which has me wondering if this is like one of those shorts in which the director bases it off of his own life, or maybe.
Mm.
We have seen that in the past because there was that short film that everyone was predicting to win, but it ended up losing, called Sanjay's Super Team. And
Right.
the director of that short, he did base it off of his own life. In fact, at the end of the short, he includes a photo of himself and his father from his childhood and then his adulthood.
Mm.
Because that short's about a relationship between a young boy and his father.
Okay.
Um,
So,
so, so what about you? How'd you base your rankings?
well, like I said, actually a combination of things. One, based on the odds, and two, I guess, well, I guess looking at title like animal behavior. Oh, it has animals in it. Oh, I'm following Chris Beecham's rules. Go with the one with the animals.
Hmm. All right. So next up is best documentary short subject.
All right, read off your list of rankings.
I have Black Sheep, Zion, Period, End of Sentence, 63 Boycott, and Lifeboat.
Hmm. Okay, I have. Well, right now I have three of those getting in, which are okay. So my rankings right now are Black Sheep, Zion, and End Game Period, End of Sentence, and Women of the Gulag.
Hmm. Yeah, I wanted to put Women of the Gulag in here because it sounds like an interesting thing and it deals with, Russia and their communist past. And but it was hard to put it in here because all the others I think have a good chance of getting in because they kind of again reflect the types of films that are usually nominated here because these documentary shorts almost always tend to be very serious and either deal with some historical issue in the past or a pressing problem in the present. So, for instance, Black Sheep, it's about racism in England in the current times, which I think will which so that's a pretty serious current issue. Um, let's see, and then 63 Boycott, which is about boycotting segregated schools. So that deals with the past. Then Lifeboat, it's about shipping refugees from Libya to Europe, and we've seen a lot of these films in this category in the past, like 4.1 Miles, which was nominated, I believe, the 2 years ago or the year before
Hmm.
in this category, which again was about the refugee crisis. And we saw there was a feature documentary also about this same crisis called Fire at Sea, which was nominated but
Hmm.
lost to OJ Made in America.
Yeah, which of course after that win, the Academy changed rules that miniseries can no longer be eligible for documentary awards at the Oscars.
Hmm. And then let's see, and then I have Zion in here because I've seen a lot of short contenders that deal with people who either have some type of illness or disability and how they or their family works to live with it because it's about a wrestler who was born without any legs.
Mm.
And it kind of reminded me of a few documentaries I've seen nominated in this category. One in which these Polish parents had their son born with this very rare genetic condition that, like, he should have died like when he was just a baby, but now he's still alive. And I saw another documentary about this Vietnamese kid who was born with very severe disabilities because his mother was infected with Agent Orange while pregnant with him, but he wants to be like this artist and establish his own like business. So it's following similar trends to that. And then period end of sentence. Always seems to be a lot of at least one documentary that showcases life in poorer parts of the world, specifically like those who still like either live in poverty or still have like kind of basic rights denied to them, which is kind of what this documentary is about.
Hmm. Okay, yeah. So I guess now, is there anything else you like to add about this?
Well, what's that one documentary? Oh, I I could also possibly see that documentary A Night at the Garden maybe getting in here because it's about Nazis and specifically American Nazis, and given that the Ku Klux Klan are pretty much neo-Nazis and Black Klansman is expected to be a big contender, maybe
Yeah.
that might be nominated in conjunction with this.
Yeah, kind of like how we saw Cartel land at nominee in conjunction with Sicario a few years ago.
Hmm. All right.
So I guess now onto the final category, which is best live action short film. And so the ranking I have right now is Caroline, Margaret, tried my best, Detainment, Skin, and I Care, or I Care.
All right. I have Caroline, Whale, Skin, Detainment, and Mayday.
Hmm. Okay. So what's the thinking behind behind your predictions?
Well, Whale I have in second place because it did get nominated at the BAFTAs.
Hmm. Eh, that's a good point.
Skin I have in third because you know it deals with race and race stories tend to be nominated here quite a lot, like what we saw with My Nephew Emmett last year.
Hmm.
And Detainments I think will be in here because that's based on a true story about the 1993 James Bulger murder case,
Mm,
in which a bunch of in which these two 10-year-old boys took a 2-year-old to the railroad tracks and beat him to death, and then his body was like run over by a train.
wow.
Yeah, oh yeah, and then the boys were like they became like one of among the youngest convicted murderers in British history.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I believe they were put on Watch Mojo's top 10 most evil children of all time video.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it was bad. I mean, I've seen like I remember once watching a YouTube documentary about the James Bulger case. It just boggles me that these young kids would do that kind of thing,
Mm, hmm,
and they didn't.
hmm.
Yeah, and it was like, yeah, I mean, and that's the scary thing is, I mean, James Bulger, he'd be the same age I am now if he were still alive.
Wow. So, so is there anything else you like to add to this category?
Uh, well, I guess with my last one, Mayday, I kind of put that in there because it seems like I don't know if it's supposed to be a comedy or not, but based on the premise, I could see how it might be because the description is several people desperate for a job gather in a man's living room as the man auctions off the job. And with a description like that, I don't know if it's going to be a comedy or a drama because there tends to be at least one comedic nominee in this category to kind of break the depressing mold, I guess you could say, from the other four because the other most of these tend to be very serious and depressing stories.
Hmm.
But I also put it in here because it reminds me of the plot summary reminds me of the classic Shirley Jackson short story The Lottery,
Hmm.
in which a bunch of people have to draw on this like a slip of paper, and if their number gets called then they get stoned to death.
Wow.
I had to. Well, I was sub. I never read that short story when I was in school, although I did read some other Shirley Jackson short stories. I remember having to read one called Charles, but the lottery. I had to when I was substitute teaching one day. I had to do a lesson of that, and yeah, it's a pretty messed up short story.
Hmm. So yeah, so I guess now that does it for all 24 categories we've discussed our Oscar nomination predictions on. And man, well, okay. So I guess before we go, I should ask you the question: is there any, I guess, nominees that you just have? Well, is what are, I guess, some long shot nominees that if they were to happen, you'd be very happy to see?
Um, Ethan Hawke for First Reformed. I know it's technically a long shot for him. Let me think.
And you're predicting him.
Yeah, but I'm not like super confident, but I'm gonna try anyway. Uh, I'd be thrilled to see Viola Davis get in for Widows if that were to happen.
Well, it is looking a little possible at this point, given her surprise nod at BAFTA, and I did see Cordell Martins actually predicting her.
Who else? Uh, I don't see her happening, but if Millicent Simmons were to get nominated for Best Supporting Actress for A Quiet Place, I'd be thrilled because I think she gave the best performance in that whole movie.
Mm.
If Quiet Place were also to pull off a nomination in categories like film editing, I'd be thrilled about that. If The Hate You Give could get some nominations, like for Russell Hornsby for Best Supporting Actor, or maybe even Best Adapted Screenplay, that'd be cool to see because The Hate You Give is probably one of the best written and acted young adult movies I've probably ever seen.
And hasn't gained much traction, though I did see Cordell is actually predicting it to get into Best Song.
Yeah, I mean, although to be honest, I don't remember that song from the end credits. It was kind of a forgettable song.
Hmm. Well, we shall see what happens there. Anything else?
Let me think. If Solo, a Star Wars story, or Welcome to Marwin somehow got onto Best Visual Effects, I'd be thrilled about that because their visual effects were pretty cool. Let me think.
Well, I am at least predicting Solo to get in, but we shall see.
Yeah, but I'm just not confident just because of the meh response people seem to have had to that movie.
Well, at least got better response than Welcome to Marwin.
Yeah, but but still, there are many people who said of Solo, a Star Wars story, what was the whole point of this movie? Why was it even made?
Well,
Uh, I'm trying to think what
Well,
else.
then again, you gotta keep in mind, category isn't so much best visual effects in a good movie; it's best visual effects overall. Like we saw The Lone Ranger get visual effects nomination a few years ago, despite that film's terrible reception.
Yeah, well, that was kind of a surprise because I don't think anyone was predicting that to get in.
Yeah,
But I think in recent years the Academy's tried to move away from nominating films with bad Rotten Tomatoes scores in the visual effects category.
well, yeah, they'll probably save it more for makeup, like Suicide Squad winning.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping they'll try to move away from that too. At least, uh, if yeah, I mean those are the long shots I can think of at this point. What about you?
Well, okay, long shots I would like to see happen. Although I'm not expecting too much, but if were to happen, I would be happy to see would be First Man overperforming in nominations, like getting Best Picture, Best Director Damien Chazelle, Best Actor Ryan Gosling, and even maybe adapted screenplay would be good. And I I'd be happy to see that do better than I guess what we're anticipating at this point. And I'd be happy to see. Oh yeah, even though I am predicting her to get into Best Actress, I would be happy to see Alicia Aparicio make the cut there. I mean, it's as I mentioned in the comments time, it's just surprising to me how she hasn't been getting any traction beyond Critics' Choice.
Hmm. Well, maybe it's her untrained status as an actress, which might turn some people off. I mean, who knows?
Well, don't you think that would impress people as well?
Mm, for some, yes, but others, I think maybe not, because there are some who. I mean, it's different for everyone, but it's
Well, yeah, I
any
mean,
other.
in fact, I should point out that, that I believe Yalitza has been campaigning, and Alfonso Cuarón has kind of been campaigning for her, reminding people that she's the heart and soul of that movie.
Yeah. Well, like I said in the video yesterday, I think that at least in Emily Blunt's case, I think that voters might feel at least her time has come for her to get an Oscar nomination for something.
Well, did they even think like that?
I think sometimes they do. I think some of them do.
Well, speaking of Emily Blunt, I would actually be happy to see her get in for A Quiet Place alone. I mean, and in fact, I did see Cordell Martin is actually predicting her to get in for A Quiet Place in supporting actress, and he's actually predicting Yalitza to get into Best Actress as well. And he has Melissa McCarthy getting snubbed for Can You Ever Forgive Me?
Mm, I don't think that's going to happen for her because she kind of checks off the boxes that voters want to see in a comedic person. She's going dramatic. She's playing a real person. She's uglying herself.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
she's
though
not.
then again, every year there's always at least one person who manages to get to every single precursor yet gets snubbed by the Academy. And given how her film hasn't gained much traction outside of her, the screenplay, and Richard E. Grant, I mean, it's not impossible.
No, but I think Viggo Mortensen might have the bigger risk of being the one who gets snubbed despite getting across the board.
Well, I'm now more curious about how Green Book's going to do at this point since it just won the PGA last night.
Yeah, but the thing is, Oscar voting closed several days earlier before that was announced. So,
Well, I know, but still, I mean, well, I mean, I'm not saying, influenced by anything, just the fact that, I guess the fact that I managed to win on a preferential ballot, and I'm not expecting it to do the same at the Oscars, but still, I mean, at least shows that, controversy hasn't stopped that from prevailing there. And, well, I guess what I meant in terms of nominations, at least.
yeah. Um, but well, I mean, we'll see. But I think at least with Can You Ever Forgive Me, it's one of the films that's managed to avoid having something controversial about it that would possibly hurt its chances. So,
Yeah, well, even though the film isn't widely expected to get into Best Picture at this point.
no, but it's expected to get like at least those three nominations, which I think it still will.
Well, yeah, I think so as well, but we shall see. I mean, we have seen surprises at the Oscars before, well, especially nominations.
Hmm. Uh, well, one distant shot contender I forgot is At Eternity's Gate. I don't expect it to get a Best Picture nomination. If it somehow did, I'd be thrilled. I'd like to see Willem Dafoe get a Best Actor nomination, and maybe there's a slight chance he could. He did get in at Golden Globes and Critics' Choice, but obviously not with SAG or BAFTA.
Hmm. And I know Rob Curry would love to see Toni Collette get in for Hereditary.
I think there probably is a slight possible chance, and after all, she did get in for The Sixth Sense after getting snubbed at every precursor.
Well, yeah, especially for another unconventional awards role.
But at the same time, The Sixth Sense was already a big contender everywhere else, and everyone expected it to get nominated for Best Picture and Best Director and Best Supporting Actor for Haley Joel Osment. So she had that advantage. Whereas with
Yeah.
Hereditary, the only thing that's really been getting any recognition is herself. It
Yeah.
hasn't really gotten any. I don't recall it getting any guild nominations in like cinematography or editing or
Uh,
production design.
then did it get a first time directing nominee at DGA?
I don't think it did. No, I I know the not. Let me look it up real quick.
Well, I am as well.
I know for a fact some of the contenders were Bo Burnham, Bradley Cooper, Carlos Lopez Estrada for blind
Oh,
spotting, excuse me.
Boots Riley for Sorry to Bother You, and Matthew Heineman for A Private War. So no, Ari Aster did not get in.
Yeah. A Private War, that's actually a bit surprising, but then again, Matthew Heineman did get nominated in directing category and documentary categories by the DGA, so maybe there's that.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, some other big DGA snubs in the first time director category. There's no Jonah Hill for mid 90s or Paul Dano for Wildlife.
Mm.
Well, I never got to see Wildlife, unfortunately. I did see mid 90s. It was good, but not great. So I can kind of see why it didn't get in here.
Yes, and I did see that Hale County this evening, dig in for documentary director at DGA. So, maybe that bodes well for your prediction.
Mhm. Um, and also, if At Eternity's Gate also somehow pulled off a surprise cinematography nomination, I would be thrilled at that because the not only is the color palette beautiful, like when you see Vincent Van Gogh going into fields or meadows to do his artwork, but also they literally shake the camera and blur it when like he's having a mental breakdown because we see his mental health battles with depression, and like the camera literally kind of showcases him and how the illness is affecting him.
Hmm.
So it's techniques that normally might turn voters off in a nomination, but they managed to use shaky cam and blurriness to positive effect here.
Hmm. Okay, so
That's all I can that's all I can think of at this moment though.
okay, so I guess that just about does it for our predictions and discussion on Oscar nominations before they come out. They'll be announced this Tuesday morning. So to anyone watching this, I guess best of luck to you on your predictions.
All right. Thanks so much for watching.
We'll see you next time. Bye.